Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and for this week's episode, I am joined by a special guest. You may know him from podcasts such as the British Sitcom History Podcast or the Diminishing Returns Podcast, and he's also starred in various films such as Dumbo, the 2019 remake, and Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. Mr. Allen Turing, and not
Hello. Starred in those films is quite a big thing. Appeared behind the stars in those films.
Yes.
Done
Yeah.
in my attempt to do direct research into the film industry, working as an extra in the background of films. That's the effort I go to for this podcast. Unfortunately, we're not doing Dumbo or Eurovision, so it didn't help.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode.
Problem. Thank you for having me.
And this week, to tie into the release of Bad Boys 4 or Bad Boys Ride or Die, we're looking at Bad Boys 1, 2, and 3. Or Bad Boys for Life.
Because you gave me options of like, these are the things I want to be looking at. Which do you want? And I went straight to Bad
I
Boys.
sent through my schedule. But yeah, you chose Bad Boys. So before we get into the films, because some people listening might not know you or no. So do you want to just describe your sort of film taste? Because you sort of have a very weird taste to me. Because on one hand, you like films where like nothing happens and they're sort of very small, intimate dramas. But then on the other hand, you sort of like dumb comedies with Vince Vaughn and like Big Mama's House and that kind of thing.
I think you've nailed it. That's what I like.
That's a very broad range of films.
Yeah, well, obviously, because I did a podcast called Diminishing Returns for many years, my film tastes have been discussed in public at length. I'm an educated film watcher. You know, I've got a master's degree in film studies, so it's there's often a lot more thought put into it than is really due. You should just watch films and go, "Oh, that was good," but we don't do that, obviously, do we? So yeah, I do really like social dramas and very small, intimate things. That tends to be what my thing is. I also really like, or I suppose you would call it a guilty pleasure. The thing that I can watch easily are just stupid comedies. I recently rewatched Wedding Crashers, and it was like, still works for me. This is great, even though I know it's kind of stupid. And there's obviously levels of that. Some comedies are just crap, but as opposed to say my podcast compatriot Sol. On Diminishing Returns, he can just like watch any like horror film, zombie film, and it's just like, it doesn't matter how crap it is, he can get something out of it. Whereas for me, like, if I'm watching a horror film, it has to really kind of tick my boxes, you know. That's relevant to this Bad Boys conversation though, because I'm not really into action. I don't just like things blowing up and cars screeching around. I'm not interested in that. Not to jump straight into it, but with Bad Boys, I'm getting the comedy element that I'm enjoying, and the action side of it is usually sort of tied in with that, as opposed to, right, here we're doing the action bit. Does get a bit, can get a bit, towards the end where they go, okay, now we're going to do our really big end action bit. Usually loses me slightly, but it's still within the kind of bounds of the whole film. So yeah, that's, I think, why Bad Boys appeals to me particularly. I've also got a real penchant for kind of mid-90s action. Nicolas Cage was my man when I was 13 years old.
I mean, he's my man now. I mean, I if I hear Nicolas Cage is in something, I'm like, well, adding that to my watch list. Like, I'm gonna see it at some point. You know, I need to.
I mean, to be fair, I do still keep tabs on what Nicolas Cage is up to. I have watched his last few films, but back in the after he did Leaving Las Vegas and won the Oscar, and people were like, "All right, sign him up. He's a lead actor now." And he just did a shit ton of like stupid action films like The Rock and Con Air and stuff like that, and they're all fantastic.
to sort of talk about 90s action as a whole before we get specifically into Bad Boys. I enjoy action films on a general sense. I kind of need them to sort of be aware. Like if a film plays into the
Yeah.
fact that it's all dumb and like is knowingly, I can go with and play themselves completely po-faced. I sort of need an air of like comedy to them to sort of get something out of them. I need to there to be
Yeah.
sort of some levity to them, and I think because action films sort of and I don't like a lot of some action films I like sort of from the 90s. I like films like Speed, and I like Die Hard and
Mm,
Die Hard's 2 and 3, and I
yeah.
enjoy, but those are more, I don't want to say thinking action films, but they're not like just an action. Well, Speed, I guess, kind of is, but I think behind Speed and Die Hard, there's a very good script behind those films.
Yeah. No, I know what you
Uh,
mean. And Speed is yeah another favorite of mine from my childhood. Really, but it is yeah because there's a pretty solid character story behind it. There's enough to kind of
mm,
pull you through. It's not just oh here's the next action beat. And yeah, I mean obviously a lot of that comes from Die Hard. Die Hard set a big trend that a lot of things followed.
because there's sort of been a talk of for years now. Is action like the action film genre? People sort of act like it's all shit now, and it's sort of not seen. It's sort of looked at sort of differently. I think
Hmm.
nowadays, like you sort of, I guess, I don't, I guess the word I'm afraid sort of like action films are very different now. I feel like sort of because I guess the sort of modern equivalent of action films, I guess, is like superhero films. I guess it's
Mm.
sort of, and you're not you're not a fan of superhero films
No,
at
not
all,
particularly.
really.
But all those like the Marvel films and stuff like that, what they've really done well is make sure there's strong characters at the heart of it all,
Yeah,
and usually there's a good solid plot line pulling you through as well.
yeah. It's like, I mean, a recent one, a film I saw recently, I saw Mad Max Fury Road, and I thought this is just action for action's sake. There's no plot. There's no nothing
Mm.
to this film, and I was very bothered by it because I think it's people like lavish that film with tons of praise and act like it's the greatest film ever, but there's no plot to it, and it's not even
Mm.
funny, and it doesn't have anything like, yeah, it's impressive stunt work, but you still need a story, and I mean, we're about to get into Bad Boys, and I don't think the Bad Boys films have strong stories, but they're entertaining, and there's a
Mm.
sense of humor to what they're doing, which
I
I
think
can connect with.
that's definitely the secret to the Bad Boys' success is the humor, the sense of humor with it. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, so to jump right into the first Bad Boys, 1995. Um, this was sort of when this was Michael Bay's first film, and it's him.
Yeah,
It does have sort of it does have elements of everything he would become known for later on in his career, but
heavy
the
cocaine use.
yeah, the cooking use weird racial jokes, um, just sort of very stupid action, stereotype. It's sort of everything he would be known for later on. But in this film, it didn't. In these first two Bad Boys films, it didn't bother me that much, and
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why, because it is just what Michael Bay does, but it is held back somewhat, I think.
Well, yeah, let's talk about Michael Bay briefly. I'm talking about 90s action films. I mean, Michael Bay is synonymous with that, helped invent
Yeah,
it in the concept.
yeah, he was. Yeah, I mean, he had Bad Boys, The Rock, and Armageddon all in the
Mm.
'90s, and I
And
mean,
so
the
he
'90s.
was, Michael Bay was what, like an advert director, right? He did adverts. I dare say he probably did some
Mm,
music videos as well, but he did very high-end adverts, flashy visuals and stuff. So
yeah, I'm just
moving
looking
into
here. It
films
is.
was not unusual,
Yeah,
and that was a kind of
yeah,
a general movement that people would do. And Bad
mm,
Boys was his debut film, teaming up with Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson. That makes total sense because they were cocaine addicts as well. So they were on the same wavelength,
yeah,
right? Um,
yeah.
I
No,
mean, Don Simpson didn't last much longer after this, did he? He died famously died with 37 different narcotics in his body or something.
Yeah,
Don
1996 he
Simpson.
died. So the year
Yeah.
after Bad Boys came out, he died.
And then straight after that, The Rock, which, like I just mentioned earlier, Nicolas Cage and Sean
Mm.
Connery teaming up back
Sean,
together at
yeah,
last. That was in Sean
Hollywood's not
Connery's
gonna
little
have.
sort of yeah, exactly. His like older age
Yeah,
renaissance as
when
an
he
action
was
star.
just before a few years before he retired forever because League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was so terrible.
And then Armageddon.
Yeah.
Armageddon is another film that I remember from my youth, and that is a really good because Armageddon is much more. Actually, Bad Boys, The Rock, Armageddon, and then Pearl Harbor as his first four films
Mm.
is a real kind of progression of okay, I'm taking it more seriously. Okay, I'm taking it more seriously. Okay, I'm taking it more seriously. The budget goes up, and the and the production company going, okay, you can't put those jokes in anymore. We're gonna have to move on to this. And so it gets more and more serious. But even Armageddon, has a real sense of humor to it. It's about that like ragtag bunch of guys who go and blow up an asteroid, whatever it is. So there is a lot of humor to that, as much as there is also this is actually very serious, and it's a lovely balance. It's a really nice balance. I've got a lot of good memories of Armageddon.
Yeah, so I mean, along with Michael Bay, this was when Will Smith was, becoming a thing. Like this was, he did
Oh yeah.
Independence Day. The year after that, he did Men in Black. The year after Independence Day, like this was when Will Smith was becoming, a-list Hollywood star. And this was this was when when people still liked him, and then over 30 years, he's, being a
Well,
Hollywood A-lister for 30 years. Yeah.
well, make no mistake, it was Bad Boys that did that. Independence Day was the
Mm.
film that made him an A-list star, but Bad Boys was the film that made everyone go, "Oh, he could be an A-list star." It wasn't a big enough film, but he wouldn't have got Independence Day without Bad Boys.
Yeah,
I'm
because I
saying that
think
I don't know
before,
the chronology of
yeah,
when he was cast and everything, but
yeah,
that's how I read it.
yeah. But I mean,
This is the film
yeah,
where everyone just went like, "Oh, he's not just kind of a teenager who can rap and he's got a bit of a charming personality. He can be a hard guy. He can do action. He can be the sexy guy, and he's cool."
yeah, exactly. Like he'd been doing like he'd been in bits and pieces before this. He'd done a couple of films, but he'd mainly done the Fresh Prince of Bel Air for 5 years. Like that's
Yeah,
pretty much
that's
what
what he
he
was
was
known for.
known
Yeah.
for. He was a big TV star, and then he, you know,
Mm.
becomes a big action star, and then
And
I don't
he
know.
was a big music star as well. He was doing the wacky little sort of
Yeah,
raps, which he
yeah,
then again in this mid '90s kind of transition to, let's say, adulthood. He went from being a sort of a quirky teen rapper to like, oh, I can do proper raps as well. And here's a song about Miami, all that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
he transitioned from, he wasn't a child actor, but from sort of silly TV teen stuff to proper like, I'm a man and I'm gonna do proper man's films.
Yeah, and I think, for all my sort of general feelings on Will Smith now, like, over the past couple years, I've really sort of,
Hmm.
sort of liked him less and less. And, and then the Oscars were sort of the thing that sort of broke, straw that broke the camel's back. But
Yeah,
I think
for a lot of
he
people. Yeah.
very much, and I mean, it wasn't just that, it was a series of events, but I think he's still watching this film, it's like, oh, he is like a very charismatic star. Like I wasn't just misremembering him being like that. Like he did have a charm, and he was a very charismatic, entertaining action star. It's just
No doubt.
he sort of he just sort of got older, and he sort of changed up what he was doing, and he sort of being a-lister for
That's right.
30
That's it,
years
isn't it?
as
He's
well.
been. This is 30 years ago, nearly. Bad Boys, and that's so. Let's sort of '96 was probably when he became this huge star. That changes your life quite considerably, even if you've been famous before that. And you just learn. You start to live a life where you get everything you want, and people just fawn at you, and it must mess with your mind. There's no way it can't. Even with, no matter how kind of cool you are, you just you're not living in the real world. You can't. Yeah, that doesn't. It's going to mess with you somehow, isn't it? It can't not.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say though, I think the chemistry that Will Smith and Martin Lawrence have in these films, mainly the first two films, I think when they get to the third one, it feels a bit more labored. But I think the first two films, they
Yeah.
do have like real chemistry. together, and they bounce off each other really well, I think.
Yeah, let's talk about Martin Lawrence. Because once
I'm less
again,
familiar with him, yeah.
this film really it did push him up to another level. And I knew him from before this. I don't know what order I watched these films in because I was a bit too young when they came out. But I knew him from the House Party films, in which he's kind of a secondary character, but he's a bit of comic relief in a comedy film anyway. But you know what I mean. And he's just sort of a wacky character. Did he do stand up? I know he has done stand up, but did he do stand up because he was famous and he could, or was he doing it
I'm not
before,
entirely
or was he just
sure.
a
Let
comedy
me.
actor? Let me just have a quick flick through his thing.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure because I'm very unfamiliar with who Martin Lawrence is, but he'd done a lot of TV stuff. Like he was in from what I understand, he was the lead in a TV sitcom called Martin. He was like a major part of that show, sort
Yeah,
of
but
in
that's
the
kind
same
of.
vein to Will Smith with Fresh Prince.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, I've just had a quick look at his sort of Wikipedia page here. He was a stand-up comedian who, yeah, like as they all do in America, the purpose of being a stand-up comedian is to get your own sitcom.
Mm.
So yeah, that is how he did. So he was a sort of an established TV actor. I'm not going to say star because Fresh Prince of Bel-Air played on BBC Two every afternoon when I was a kid. Martin did not. So
Yeah, but yeah, he
there is
was. Yeah,
definitely a
yeah,
difference there.
but yeah,
But
they
he,
were mostly two TV guys for the most part, and
yeah. And I remember watching a Martin Lawrence stand-up thing, or trying to once, because I was like, oh, Martin Lawrence, I like Martin Lawrence, let's watch that. And I like, got 10 minutes in, I was like, this is unwatchable. This is absolutely unwatchable. And I turned it off. So I don't know much about his comedy. But yeah, the
Mm.
Bad Boys again was like a first major role, and it is a classic buddy cop thing. You have the kind of the one who's cool and sexy and serious, and the one who's a bit more wacky and off the wall.
Mm.
And here's the major twist that Bad Boys did it and they changed the world here. They're both black guys. Can you imagine? Because usually it's like the straight laced white guy and the wacky black guy,
Yeah,
usually Eddie Murphy and Nick
yeah,
Nolte or something like that. So
yeah, or like, there is the inverse where it's like Lethal Weapon, where it's sort of the other way around. But yeah, it's usually a black guy
yeah,
and a white guy as the cops, but it's not usually two black guys playing the
and like
parts.
we're sort of making a bit of a joke of that, but even in 1995, making a film with two black leads, and it's basically they're the big names. That
Mm.
was an unusual thing to do, and this isn't a film that's aimed at black people. So, which is what it
Yeah,
would have been, like House Party,
that's
for
yeah,
example, is for black people, but it's aimed at the black culture and that
yeah,
market. This was a big mainstream film aimed at teenage boys basically, but that's all right. And that sexy heroic lead was Will Smith. This is Will Smith's legacy. Whatever we think of him
mm.
now, he made it. He said like, oh, that the main hero lead, the white guy, I can do that. That is
Yeah,
like, and everyone went like, oh, black people can do that. Oh wow, it's
yeah,
just like
because I feel
America in the
like
'90s.
yeah, because you didn't see this often. If there was like a black character in an action film, there, it depends, but they're often like the sidekick, like in Die Hard. They're sort
Yeah.
of on the side. They're not the protagonist. John McClane is the protagonist. And I think it's interesting to see
Well,
that, like, how that
well,
sort of changed, because it doesn't seem that weird. Like watching Bad Boys now, it's like, yeah, it's sort of, because I've grown up in a world of where bad boys exist, but I can
yeah.
imagine when it first came out, it's like, oh, this is a bit different because you hadn't seen that. Yes, sort of not the done thing.
Well, the obvious example here to look at is Eddie Murphy, because throughout the
Yeah.
'80s, Eddie Murphy established himself as a comedic lead, an action lead, and Beverly
Mm.
Hills Cop obviously is a really good tie-in here. It is a legitimate action cop film, but it's also got loads of comedy in it, and a lot of that
Mm.
is just down to Eddie Murphy. He was improving a lot. They wrote it kind of
Mm.
around him. It was intended as a serious film, and they kind of comedied it up because he was a comedy actor. But he
Yeah.
could do all the action stuff legit as well. But if you look at the sort
Mm.
of stereotypes of characters we're looking at, Axel Foley is like the slightly off the wall, wacky, black
Yeah.
giant cock, but they just made
Yeah.
him the lead and made the joke that the white guy is with is just is kind of a useless, by the book kind of stickler, who doesn't really
Mm.
know what he's doing, as opposed to the by the book stickler who really knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
difference. That kind of clash between two styles.
Mm.
But with Bad Boys, we get that kind of clash, but they've known each other so long they've just meld together and they work perfectly together. And that's the chemistry. That's the what makes Bad Boys work. That chemistry between our two leads, not just as actors
Mm.
but as the characters as well. And the
Yeah.
backstory is the backstory is that they've got this huge. They've got this. I don't know how long they're supposed to have known each other, but right through like police academy. I don't want to
Mm.
evoke the police academy films there, but they've come through the academy together and they've known each other for years. They're bad boys for life. They're best friends as well as partners. So and it works. It works brilliantly, and the relationship they have, and in Bad Boys, the actual the film, the first film, they're obviously chasing the bad guy, whatever. But the storyline, the hook that makes us go, oh, that's interesting, is that they have to pretend to be each other,
Mm.
and that's where our humor comes from and our conflict comes from.
Yeah, it creates. I wasn't like massively aware. Like I'm aware of what Bad Boys is, but I'm not like largely familiar with like I didn't know what these films were really about. I sort of just knew it was like a buddy cop film. So
Mhm.
I went in knowing nothing on any of these films really. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting setup, and it creates nice moments of comedy as well. I think the opportunities them pretending to be each other does create, because it gives them sort of opportunity. Yeah, it gives them the making of some good comedy moments.
Which they use it a lot, but I was surprised they didn't lean into it even more, or have it as kind of a really kind of pivotal scene. Well, I guess it does, but I don't know. It really is just a sort of comedic side bit. It never quite
Yeah.
falls into the. But like, so the basic story of Bad Boys is that, or the main drive of it is, there's some big, like crazy, I have a foreign accent drug guy, drug kingpin with a sort of vaguely European accent, and
As they all
they've
were
stolen loads of
in the
heroin.
90s.
Yeah, exactly. It was the 90s. He's stolen a load of heroin, and so they're trying to track him down. And in the process of this, the bad guys kill someone, and there's a witness. And so, really, our main story is our bad boys, Mac Larry and Marcus Burnett, are protecting the witness. But through some comedic shenanigans, she thinks they're the other one around,
Mhm.
and so they have to
Yeah.
pretend around her that they are the other one. Which means you've got Marcus, who's Martin Lawrence's character. He's the homebody. He's been married for years, got 3 kids, and he just he's like, I'm too old for this shit. I just want to go home and get my quality
Yeah.
time with my wife. And then you've got
Mm.
Mike Larry, who is the sexy playboy, meeting up with a masseuse every evening and stuff like that. So
Mm.
those pretending to be the other leads to all sorts of comedic hijinks and japes. And
Mm.
genuinely, like I sort of said that in a slightly sarcastic way, but like it genuinely is very funny. It works really nicely. Like I say,
Mm.
their chemistry with each other is great. And then action scenes. They get the bad guy and save the witness at the end. Like
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
let's not get
that's
precious
pretty
about
much
it.
sums it
It
up.
all turns out okay in the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I sort of made a few sort of notes as well. First of all, one of the earliest things I noticed was how thin Martin Lawrence looks, because I've seen the trailers for the recent Bad Boys films, and I'm like, he's much
Yeah.
he's much thinner than he looks, back then. And I'm like, I mean, that was 30 years ago, so it's not unsurprising, but it's
Yeah,
like,
fair
oh,
enough,
he's
isn't
definitely fair enough. Yeah, I mean, he's nearly 60, so I can cut him a bit of slack. But I think the film it does a very good job of the sort of action sequences. It's very good at making them engaging. I felt like I didn't think these film like just I enjoyed watching these films. I was sort of like there were some moments that I thought were quite funny, and I thought there were some solid pieces of action, and I think the chemistry between Martin Lawrence and Will Smith did help carry, because I feel
Oh,
like that
definitely.
could, in the hands of different actors, it wouldn't work. As I think you need with buddy cop films, you really need to have your two leads just have that chemistry that just makes the
Yeah.
film work. Because otherwise, the film just sort of doesn't. The film isn't going to work if your two leads don't have chemistry.
No, that is, and I think it's something that's very difficult in the Hollywood machine to account for. It's not like you can get two actors together and get them to hang out for a bit and see if they work, and then if it doesn't, just like, oh, sorry, yeah, we're going to try someone
Yeah.
else. You hire your big name actors or whatever, and perhaps this had the benefit of this wasn't a huge big name film. Like I said, it was a bit of a star maker for both of them, and so you can kind of get these guys when they're hungry and fresh and determined to make an impact. And if they just click, which obviously they did, great. And everything just pulls together. But also, there's a real great sideline in side characters here. Uh, like and you see them, threatening some little, druggy guy. They're like interrogating him for information. Let's say very much police brutality, but it was the 90s, so it's okay. Uh,
Yeah.
and,
This is
and
definitely
then,
the.
like the very opening scene of the film, we see them driving along in Mike Lowry's expensive car. By the way, there's a backstory to Mike Lowry that he's a trust fund kid. You know that he's got left loads of money and his parents died, and he's a cop because he loves the game. And
Mm,
so he doesn't need the money. And the
mm,
only reason for that is so that Michael Bay can film him driving a stupid car. But anyway, there we go. They're driving, and they get carjacked by two guys. And there's a very opening scene. It sets our characters, and they basically start arguing with each other, and it looks like they're falling out. But then, actually, what they're doing is causing a distraction so that they can then um, grab the guns off the bad guys. And it's just a perfect setup because it establishes their characters. They're totally in tune with each other. They
mm,
they both know what's going on here. We don't, kind of as an audience at this point, but they both know what's going on, and then they're just totally in sync with each other. And then we
mm.
see a lot of that other stuff as well. There's a famous scene with the Skittles scene in the in a little shop or something. But these
Yeah.
the people they interact with, kind of here and there, just one scene characters, are nicely cast, nicely acted. There's just a great energy to the whole thing. And again, from
Mm,
direction point of view, it's Michael Bay before he like completely lost his mind. Michael Bay with just like one layer of limitation of budget and kind
mm.
of also people who could actually say, let's not do that. And so it's just
Yeah.
nice because Michael Bay is just way too much and over the top. So it just needs that little
Yeah.
bit of hampering
He's
to keep
got
him
the
in
sort
on.
of the manic energy you kind of need for this film, but before he just had total control of whatever he did. Like this is sort of, he's got that
Yeah,
energy, but
and your
it's
action
reserved and
scenes,
held back.
the action scenes are pretty huge when it comes down to it. But obviously, there's limitations of budget. It's the first time Michael Bay had anything done on this size as well. So he's looking at this and going, "Wow, this is massive. It's big, great." And then the next film, he's going to have to go, "Well, I have to go bigger now." And then like 10 years later, he's got robots fighting each other and and destroying cities and stuff.
Yeah, like I sort of, I mean, we're still talking about the first one, but yeah, when I was watching the second one, I was like, oh yeah, this really does. This is what Michael Bay would just like. It's very Michael Bay-ish, but it's like at a tolerable level in these two films. It's sort of,
Yeah.
and I kind of feel like, yeah, he just sort of has that thing where it's like, this isn't like high art, I like this is very cheesy, silly nonsense, but like I think that's okay. Sometimes, like I think, sort of in a general sense, I think I'm able to sort of go with silly action films. I think so. I know some people who are sort of they're a bit more serious about films and they don't like sort of campy films that sort of they like comedies, but they're definitely like what they consider comedies are just very like um not what like they sort of don't go for sort of I guess more puerile comedies. They're very
Mhm.
highbrow with like their humor taste, and I can go with a film like I enjoy stuff like even something like Beavis and Butthead. I'm a fan of Beavis and Butthead, And like I know it's very
Yeah,
puerile and
fair enough.
very simple, but it does it well, and I think these films, for the level of humor they're going for, they do it well. Which is something I have to commend about the films, is that they work for what they're trying to be. You know, I think sort of at the level it's pitched at, I think the films work at that level.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Not every film has to be high art, and it'd be boring if they were. You know, we want the silly films as well, and like I say, Bad Boys, I think, kind of ticks comedy and action. If you're into that sort of thing, it does both well, and that is a difficult thing to do. It's an easy thing to mess up.
Yeah, but I think action, and again, early Michael Bay. I think early Michael Bay, because I also would throw, because I think The Rock is also a very solid action film. You know, has
Yeah,
some really good stuff to it as well. And I think that also falls under this bracket, the sort of similar bracket of it's very entertaining. There's some very engaging action set pieces, but there's some nice moments of comedy that do work and do actually land to sort of even it out. And the film's sort of aware that it's silly. And maybe Michael Bay just sort of lost that, or he just sort of was given too much power and he sort of forgot, like, oh yeah, I'm aware of, I think he sort of fallen off. It's not like I ever thought he's an amazing director, but I think he is
yeah.
capable of a specific type of film. I think he can make those well.
Yeah, with the exception of Pain and Gain, which is the most bizarre film I've ever seen, but great. Like it feel like he just does big overblown action, right? It was. I
Film
tell
is
you
or
what,
something.
right? When I watched Pain and Gain, I'd love to watch it again, like see what I think of it now. But when I watched Pain and Gain, it was like this. Everyone on board this is making a comedy film, but Michael Bay doesn't know, and he's shooting it as if it's the most serious film ever, and everyone else is taking the piss, and it just created this weird dichotomy within it. But it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
I'm trying to think of like recent films about cops. I'm trying to. I can't. My mind is blanked on films about cops, like from like recently. Because I don't have like an immediate like pull to mind, like a film like Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Like that's a cop film, arguably, but it doesn't it's not a very positive side of the police, I guess. So it's a very. I mean, this is also a very different film, but I
Yeah,
think in action films,
you can show like police brutality or police dodgy kind of dealings and say, "Oh, this is morally wrong."
yeah,
But Bad
yeah,
Boys
exactly,
loves it. They love it, and
yeah,
you can say the same for like Lethal Weapon, that sort of thing. It's like
yeah,
Mel Gibson is kind of on the edge and doesn't play by the rules.
yeah. I mean, even Die
And
Hard, I think to
that
a
was standard,
degree.
in '80s and '90s. Yeah, and there is a trick to it because even within the Bad Boys franchise, you see in the first film they get what's his name? Uh, he, who ended up being the Sopranos. I can't remember his name, but and he's like the little drug dealer, and
Mm,
they don't beat him up. They kind of grab him. They give him a bit of a kind of and they're playing it as if Will Smith's going mental and he's going to shoot him, and Martin Lawrence starts going, "Oh, I can't control him. You're going to have to tell him everything you know."
yeah,
And we know as an audience they're deliberately playing him. They're not actually going to do anything that bad.
yeah,
And so that's
but
just okay.
yeah,
Skip forward
but
a
it
couple
does
of films
also.
where Will Smith is like totally like he'd been shot himself and he's like he's really on the edge and he just goes and grabs someone and beats the shit out of someone until he
Yeah,
tells him
and
information. And
it is weird because
there
that,
is a
yeah,
and it is deliberately delineated as in, oh wow. It is kind of even in character. It's in the film. It's saying this is too far, but he
yeah,
certainly never receives any consequences for that action.
yeah, and I also think, because we're not American, and I think for a lot of people in certain parts of America, there's a real love for the police. So I think that's possibly part of it as well. Whereas here, like in this country in Australia, we don't really, like, the police are just the police. We don't have
Yeah.
like we don't wear like Blue Lives Matter flags or anything like that. Like we're
Yeah,
not
you
like
respect
the
them.
police
You
are.
don't venerate
Yeah,
them.
yeah, exactly.
and
We,
that
if the police, yeah, we hold
and
them to.
the other thing as well we have to acknowledge here is that this is two black cops beating up a white suspect, and there was perhaps some sort of uh, perhaps a certain section of the audience was enjoying that.
But yeah, sort of alongside them in the film, we've got Joe Pantoliano, who
Yeah.
I really like him. I don't. He shouldn't have hair though. I thought he looked really
Well, it's not
strange with
real hair.
hair. Yeah, I know, but I'm like,
Something stuck to his
he's one
forehead.
of those actors where it's like he can't have hair. Like he doesn't look right with hair. Like it's a and it's weird because I was like I was watching the credits. I'm like, oh, Joe Pantoliano's in this. Nice, I like him. And then he appears and he's got like hair. And I was like, is that? Oh, it is him. I've just never seen him with hair because all I ever seen him in is like just bald, and I'm like, yeah, that's what he should be.
But Joe Pantoliano, yeah, one of those actors, just absolutely a great value. Just drop him in, and again here he's playing a really stereotypical. Oh, that's not fair. An archetypical character
Mm.
of the hard ass chief. You know, you got the cop who won't play by the book, and you've got the chief who's going like, "I got the mayor up my ass. You gotta keep this under control." He's playing that perfectly because he's just on the edge of parody. And in this film, that's
Mm.
kind of a comedic idea. We can still take him seriously. This isn't a joke, but
Mm.
it sort of comes with a knowledge of all this kind of very archetypal character. And here's the twist, right? He's white. Because this character's usually the black one, the hard ass black
Yeah.
police chief. It's amazing
Yeah.
how they twisted everything.
Yeah. Oh, these movies, they're so clever. Just flipping everything on that. Yeah, no. No,
But
I
I
agree
think
with
it
that
is
though.
really
I
good, and
really
again,
yeah.
he has good chemistry with the leads as well. We believe that he's this authority figure, even though he's a slightly buffoonish character. They take him seriously when they need to. I
Mm.
think it's actually this character is crucial to the chemistry, and he balances it perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm being very positive about these films because they're like I was sort of like a bit apprehensive because I'm like, will these? Because I'm not a Michael Bay fan, obviously. I like The Rock, but that's
Yeah.
kind of it. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought these films they're very watchable films. Like they're very much like, oh yeah, if someone was like, hey, I want to watch Bad Boys, be like, sure, I'll watch it. This is like
Mhm.
it's not like a film I'm jumping and being like, oh, I can't wait to watch that again. But if someone wanted to watch, this is sort of in that bracket of if someone wanted to watch this film with me, or like I caught it on TV, I'd watch it, or at least some of it. I'm very much like, and that's like films. It's like there are films like that, and that's okay. I don't need every film to be like like a classic for me that I'm like I can't wait to
Mhm.
watch it again. I mean, I don't watch films
Yeah.
that often anyway, but I've had films where I'm like, oh man, that's a really great film. I look forward to watching that again at some point. But also we've got Taya Leone, sort of as the female
As the
character.
female, yeah,
There.
yeah, the female character. Yeah, I think Taya Leone, again, a very solid performance here. I think she's sort of playing. There's a nice balance here of the comedy because she has to be able to play on the level of our bad boys and that comedic level, but we have to kind of legitimately believe that she's fearing for her life and all that as well. I think it
Mm.
works. And I I was talking to my girlfriend about this, and whenever I talk to my girlfriend about films, she's always just like, right, yeah, is there a woman in it? I'm like, well, no, but um, uh, but on this one, I was like, "Oh no, you'll like this one. There's a woman in it. She's a prostitute." But apart from that, like, oh god, yeah. So she's kind of a prostitute. She's not quite.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah, they don't go quite into it. She's sort of more just there's the
she's just going
witness
along
who's
for
sort
the
of
ride. Yeah.
the one they're
Yeah,
protecting.
and and to be fair, there is a sex worker character in this who gets killed, and it's very much she is a figure of sympathy, and Will
Mm.
Smith is sort of it gives him a bit of personal vendetta. So it's not this isn't this film doesn't dismiss all women are whores. It's certainly not doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, but there are not many female characters in it, and
Mm.
yeah, one of them betrays everyone. One of them gets killed, and the other
I
one
mean, yeah,
just
again, I think
has
that's
dogs
sort of
that shit on the
very
carpet.
sort of error. Like, it's a weird because this is a very it's a a good film and there's a lot to it, but there's also some. it's not the most like there's not much female representation in it, and or of
Mm,
films from the era really. And I
yeah.
don't necessarily like mind that. Like I know some people who are very sort of particular about that thing. I think it sort of is a case by case basis, I guess, in terms of like
Yeah,
how does it use.
the overall problem with that is that you kind of watch this film and go, okay, yeah, it's not like strong female representation here, but that's not what this film was about. But the problem was that no films were doing that. It'd be fine if some were, and I can watch that if I want to. But yeah, there weren't any films, and things are a bit better now. So
Mm,
that's progress. That's the way it goes. But I'm not going to look back at a film from '95 and judge it too harshly because it's just
yeah.
doing what it was doing in its own time.
To sort of I mean, we've talked a lot about the first one. Yeah, I
Well,
just really
yeah,
enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was a solid action film. It didn't do anything that special or unique for me, but I think as a for what it is, I think it works well for what it's trying to do.
I think it's great. I really do like it a lot, and I've watched it many times over the years. Most recently, a few days ago, to refresh, so I could record for this.
Mm,
And I'm very happy to go back to it. I'm not someone who watches the same film over and over again, but film I would go back to, yeah, time and time again. It's fun,
mm,
great chemistry. I think it's got a really nice balance of
mm.
comedy, action, and you know a solid enough story at the heart of it to keep you pulling you through. Yeah, I'm a big
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to move on to the second one now?
I'll tell you what I'd like to do is have a look what came between, because
Mm,
let me say, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, this film was kind of made them stars. It certainly pushed them up
mm,
to the next level. So Will Smith
mm.
immediately after this did Independence Day, which really did make him a mainstream star. Because straight after
Yeah.
that he did Men in Black, which is, Men in Black. We know what it is now; it's a franchise. But also at the time, it was just such an amazing high concept action film for the '90s. It was that we got CGI in there. It was like the whole new world. We can have aliens. We've got and
Yeah.
again, Men in Black, something that entirely holds up for me. It's amazing.
Yeah, no,
Enemy of the State is just a nice little action film. Wild Wild West, okay, we all know that's not a great film, but it's totally in that vein of like just these big high concept action films. Um, and then he kind of came in with Bag of Ants and Ali were like the kind of like, okay, take me seriously as an actor, kind of. I can do
I think he
drama
got
as
Oscar
well.
nominated for Ali as well, if I recall.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. And so like that's what he did between he completely cemented himself as an A-list Hollywood star and then transitioned into okay, I can do like proper serious stuff as well. Perfect career trajectory, really, and that's why he's Will Smith. That's why he's this he has been this A-lister star for so many years. But more interestingly, I think, is Martin Lawrence because he
Mm,
also like off the back of this became a much bigger star, but he really did focus on being a wacky comedy lead, really.
yeah,
So,
I'm less familiar with his Martin Lawrence's work outside of Bad Boys. Like, I'm not
well, I am.
as
I
familiar.
don't know why I've got a bit of a soft spot for Martin Lawrence in the '90s, but I have, and I've watched pretty much every film he made. So,
He's in Big Mama's house. That's why you like him.
so yeah. But before we get to Big Mama's house, you've got things like Nothing to Lose, which is like I mean, they're not cops, but it's that buddy cop kind of vibe between him and Tim
Mm,
Robbins as a sort of stuck-up white guy, and he is the wacky black guy. Uh, Life, where he's partnered up with Eddie Murphy, and that's like a comedy film about them in prison. Blue Streak, again, he's the cop. Um, Kind of not doing anything different, and you what you get with Martin Lawrence is that's what you get. He's doing his thing. But I think Big Mama's House was his big. Okay, you can really go for it here. You're not just gonna play Martin Lawrence. You're gonna play Big Mama as well. So when they come to do Bad
mm,
Boys 2, it's 8 years later, 2003, because Bad Boys was a big enough success that they could have churned out a sequel 2 years later.
yeah.
But they didn't because it was such a big success that your actors went off and were getting a lot more money elsewhere.
Them because if they because they could have kept churning sequels out, every couple years because And I think a lot of times franchises or films that want to become franchises do that, and in turn they lose things, like they lose what made the first one good. I think having that
Mhm.
8-year break in between films does like give you a bit of time to be like, okay, we're not pumping a new one out. We don't have a deadline of like we're getting a Bad Boys film out every 2 years. And you see that with certain franchises, sort of with action franchises, but you see it with sort of more horror franchises as well, like slasher franchises. They always like we're pumping out a new film every 2 years or whatever, and the quality of film slowly decreases because they just have a deadline of like we need to get a film out at this point. And I think it's interesting that Bad Boys didn't fall into that because it definitely seems like it could have. Like it definitely seems like they could have just kept making, however many sequels they wanted to make for years, but they, there's, massive time gaps between each of the films. And then, there's an even bigger gap between Bad Boys 2 and Bad Boys 3, so they, I think it's interesting to look at that when, you look at, I mean, Fast and the Furious, they sort of get a film out every 2 years or so, and those aren't particularly
Yeah.
high quality
Well, it was.
films.
I mean, even now, like even in the 90s, there was a slightly different mentality to that. They had sequels and everything, but it was like a film did well, and they went, "Oh, let's do a sequel," and they kind of just did exactly the same thing again, and it did slightly less well, and then they went, "Okay, that was enough." Whereas now, it's like you're building a franchise from the beginning. Like you're starting to add the ingredients in to make it happen. That's very telling of Bad Boys because there would have been plans to make a sequel straight away. It was a success, but your talent was off doing other things, and Michael Bay as well. And so the fact that they came back to this 8 years later, and it's not like they were all in need of it. Nobody needed to make this film. They wanted to make
Mm.
it. I think there was a real kind of like we had such a great time making that film. Let's get together and do another one. There's still the money all went up. They all got better paychecks for it and everything like that. But I think there was a genuine like this was a great experience. Let's do it again. I like Bad Boys 2 a lot less.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna get onto this,
yeah.
because from my sort of outside perspective, Bad Boys 2 is the one I feel like gets referenced more. Like the
Mm.
obvious example is Hot Fuzz. They reference Bad Boys 2.
What about Lethal Weapon? No. You seen Die Hard, dude? No. Bad Boys 2? No. You ain't seen Bad Boys 2?
You haven't seen Bad Boys
Mo-
2?
Yeah, and so from my outward perspective, I was under the impression Bad Boys 2 was generally liked more. And then I look at like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and places like that, and it's got like a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. The first one has like a 43%. And I'm like, oh, people really don't like Bad Boys 2 as much. And it's weird because I would put them about on par with each other, but I think I slightly prefer Bad Boys 2, but I there's not much to it really. But I
Well, for
think
me,
that
for me, Bad
yeah.
Boys 2 is a big step down. It's like it's like Bad Boys, like we said. It's kind of the chemistry just came together. You can't really plan for that. It's a bit like capturing lightning in a bottle. How do you do that again? Put all the same people together. But then in Bad Boys 2, it's like, oh, you don't know why it worked. You guys don't know what worked in the first film. Uh, and but the major thing for me, Bad Boys 2, they ramp everything up, like the action scenes and everything. They kind of everything goes up a notch, and I'm not interested in that. Michael Bay has got more toys to play with. I don't care. What 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 we lose in Bad Boys 2 is the comedic element. It's still there, but it just doesn't sparkle as much. It feels a bit more forced. It feels like someone has kind of got a professional scriptwriter and said, "Okay, write some material like you would see in Bad Boys," and they've done their best, and it's just not quite there. And I get
Mm,
the impression as well in Bad Boys that there's a lot of improv between them. Those scenes where they're arguing with each other, they obviously have a plan of what they're doing, but I think they're just sparking off each other quite a lot.
mm,
And we don't get that in Bad Boys 2. There's one scene, a really famous scene in Bad Boys 2 that stands out to me, and it's a great scene where a teenage boy comes to Marcus's house to take out his teenage daughter. They're supposed to be like 15. And so Martin Lawrence's character decides he's going to just put the frighteners on this kid to make sure he doesn't try and take advantage of his daughter. And so they open the door and he starts, just giving him a bit of abuse, basically, in a kind of parental way. And then Will Smith turns up and he's like pretending he's like the uncle who's just come out of prison and he's waving his gun about and all this stuff. And it's just this beautiful moment. They're playing with each other. It's kind of got this nice character. They've got this poor kid there who obviously isn't an actor, and they've just sort of stuck him in there. And they just they just said react to what happens, and he doesn't know what's going on, and he's scared. It's a really nice scene. It's a standalone scene that works really beautifully to set the characters. That felt like Bad Boys to me, but a lot of the rest of the film doesn't quite live up to that. And the bad guy is just a real kind of ridiculous. I don't know who the actor is. I've never seen him in anything else, but I mean, it's a terrible performance. The bad guy, and like the bad guy in the first one is pretty basic, but in this one, it's ridiculous. He's just coked off his head, shooting at rats and stuff. It's just madness.
Yeah, I'm just having a look here, and one of the someone who did script revisions on the film was Judd Apatow. So I think they got sort of a comedy writer in to probably do some.
Yeah, probably like let's boost this up a bit. But it's all these kind of weird set pieces. Like there's a Ku Klux Klan meeting that they infiltrate, but there's no setup to it. They're just there at the beginning, and it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah. So I turned the film on, and I'm just like, first few seconds, I'm like, okay, this is okay, and then there's like a burning cross and people in KKK robes. I'm like, what the fuck is this? What have I? And I'm like, this is the same film, right? And I'm just like, check. Yep, this is Bad Boys 2. This is Bad Boys 2. And I'm like, this is very weird. This is a weird opening scene, and I was like, it's really silly, and I don't know how to feel about this because I was just sort of like, how do I? Yeah, I was just like, what do I make of this? Because this is very weird.
But I think in concept, it's got some nice ideas. The basic kind of character line is that Martin Lawrence is too old for this shit. He wants to retire. And Will Smith's sort of like, you can't do that. And then we introduce Martin Lawrence's sister, Sid, played by Gabrielle Union, who is also works for the DEA, so she's in kind of law enforcement, and turns out she's much more kind of involved undercover than her brother is aware. So you've got this kind of overprotective brother, and then she's also banging Will Smith. So they have the overprotective boyfriend as well, so they're trying to look after her, and she's like, behave, I'm a strong independent woman, don't look after me, in a very, I think, deliberate attempt to create a strong female character in the series. But then also you've got the tension between the two male characters because he's banging his sister and they're not sure about that. But, well, I do actually like you. You're my best friend. Maybe my sister being with you isn't so bad. It's a nice bit of character stuff to be able to pull all that together. I think there's some great ideas working here. But it just never quite finds the chemistry and just never gets together for me in the same way. And in fact, maybe it set high expectations from the first one, but I quite dislike the second one. It just doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't really tell a massive difference between the two. They were basically the same. I think I found Bad Boys 2 slightly funnier, but I didn't really think there was a whole lot different between the two films. I thought they were I mean, I liked both of them, but I didn't have a massive amount of. Yeah, they basically were the same to me. I'm just looking at who.
The other problem as well is like Michael Bay by this point has completely lost his mind and has to make everything bigger. And so in the first film we have a massive end sequence where it all takes place on like a shipyard or something, but there's stuff exploding all over the place. In the second film, they have a military incursion into Cuba. Like what? What are you doing? That's too much of a step.
Yeah. And there's a big scene towards the end where they're in this big Humvee and they're driving down this hill, just crashing through tin buildings, just over and over it, just down a massive hill. And I'm like, okay, this really is a Michael Bay. The first one I didn't notice it it wasn't on my mind as much. I know this is a Michael Bay film, but it didn't come through as much. This one, it really came through. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a real Michael Bay thing going on a bit. And the film is like about a half an hour longer. Complete. I didn't feel the length, but I'm like, I definitely didn't need all of it. That sort of the obvious example to me is that scene with Will Smith and Mark Lawrence, and there's like all the cameras on them, and they're talking about like Martin Lawrence has been
Oh
shot in
yeah.
the ass, and he's like talking, and I'm like, okay, we definitely didn't need this because this is the weird Michael Bay sort of racial humor coming in, and
It
it
is
didn't need, I
that
don't
is
think it needed
exactly.
that.
This feels like not a kind of funny comedic break. It feels like someone's sat down and like a Saturday Night Live writer was like, let's do a parody of a Michael Bay comedy bit and make it
Yeah,
as bad as possible, as crass as we can.
yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
was like, I noticed it more in Bad Boys 2. I will say I noticed the weird racial stuff a bit more. The first one I think is relatively okay. There wasn't anything major that jumped out to me that I was like, "Oh, that's a bit weird." I guess it's not even racial even in Bad Boys 2. It's a weird homophobia joke more than
Yeah.
anything really. It is very
But like
weird
I say,
because like,
I
yeah,
don't
you don't
know.
do that.
I don't know off the top of my head the full backstory of the original Bad Boys, like who originally wrote it or what it was made for. But they did not go, "Oh, we got Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Let's write a film." Someone wrote this cop film and then they put black people in it. And like I said, in the 1995, that was kind of this revolutionary thing. So that's why there's
Mm,
not that much kind of racial humor. By the second film, they're
yeah.
like, okay, Michael Bay's going like, oh well, let's do some like, let's do a bit where there's loads of toxic masculinity and it sounds like they're being gay. And then a sassy black woman goes, "Y'all motherfuckers need Jesus." Like that'll be funny, right, guys? And everyone's
Yeah.
still like, "Yeah, okay,
Exactly.
Michael."
Yeah. And
So
it's
kind of it
weird.
feels 2003 though. It's still a long time ago. There was homophobia was perfectly fine back then. It's funny, isn't it? Like that specific scene. Basically they're talking about how Will Smith accidentally shot Martin Lawrence in the arse. And so they talk about taking a shot in the arse and like, oh, you really hurt me, and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
All these things that could easily be interpreted to the audience who are accidentally listening as gay stuff. But I think if they'd come out and then someone had just gone, you people are so brave, like it might have worked. But it's because Will Smith is
Yeah.
like, I'm not talking to you about this. This is a bit too gay. I'm talking about your
Yeah.
ass. It's legitimately like I'm not because he's going like we're best friends, we're brothers for life, but I can't talk to you about this because it's about your ass and that's gay.
Yeah, I think it's a very again, I enjoy Bad Boys too. I think there's some it's a bit long though. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't need all of it. Towards the end of the film, it like there is a lot of action. Like it is really because the film is sort of like got action sequences throughout. Whereas the first one is a bit held. Like there are action sequences, but the second one it just goes all like the first like the opening scene of Bad Boys. It's an action scene technically, but it's not a big one. It's just like a quick fight on the side of the road. Whereas the
Mhm.
Bad Boys 2, it's opening at a cross burning. It's like it's interrupting a clan meeting. It's a massive thing, and I think there's sort of towards the end they run across like a minefield. Interesting bit that. And sort of earlier on, there's this point where they're like, "Oh, how many bullets have you got left?" I'm like, "Oh, I've got one bullet left. I've got two bullets," and I'm like, "Oh, well, that's I wonder if that's gonna come back later, It's like I know, like it's obvious it's a setup for like, well, that's okay. We'll see how that comes back in 15 minutes. 'Cause the film's almost done. It's like sometimes I watch a film and I'm like, oh, that's if I watch like a film where someone gets like a gadget, I'm like, oh, well, that's gonna be a big thing later. It's like
Mm.
falls into it sort of as like yeah, I mean, I again, I think it's a perfectly watchable film. I'd be, I wouldn't mind watching it again, but it does very much. It does sort of feel like it is kind of just Bad Boys One again. I think it's sort of a bit of the yeah. It doesn't have enough new to it really for me to be like, oh, this is. It is just kind of Bad Boys One again with the added element of there's a woman who's, there sort of alongside, I mean, it's, who's sort of helping them, in a different way, but it's sort of on that same sort of line. I,
Yeah. Well,
well, in
like
some
for me,
aspects.
it's like the same but less because it's not. It just doesn't have the same
Yeah,
magic,
it's
I guess.
like, yeah, I guess it would sort of fall under a similar category of sort of like, trying to think. I guess Men in Black 2 is kind of just Men in Black 1 again, but I mean, it's a
Yeah.
bit different there, but it's sort of trying to do the same stuff again, but just doesn't work as well.
That's okay. That's what sequels do, right? That's all right. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine, yeah, but it's sort of less. You have less desire to go back to it. I think it is interesting though that Bad Boys 2 has sort of permeated the pop culture a bit more, and I'm not entirely sure why that is because it is generally just sort of seen as a lesser film. So I wonder why it's a bigger deal in pop culture. Like I'm not entirely sure how that happened. I guess because the first one was like a big deal, but I guess the second one was like a bigger deal. I guess like they had 8 years to become massive Hollywood stars. So I guess it would have been bigger in the sense that they'd had, everyone knew how good the first one. Well, people really liked the first one, so I guess that's probably why. But I don't know if that's necessarily a like completely accurate.
Yeah, maybe it just had more eyes on it, but bigger stars. Much kind of it. This was the follow up. Everyone's sometimes bigger budget.
Yeah, but they're based. Yeah, I enjoy both these first two films, and to be honest, I don't think we needed a third one or a fourth one, which we're tying this into. But I mean, I
Yeah,
guess
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
good transition to.
It's interesting because we talked about they didn't immediately make the second one because they were all so successful. They were busy, but they came back together because what seems to be a genuine kind of desire to make the film. Where it feels like Bad Boys 3 came about because everyone was like, "Ooh, shall we try and hit up some of the old hits to get a bit of attention?"
Yeah, should we? Yeah, exactly.
Because Will Smith's career has continued apace, strong throughout the 2000s,
Yeah,
but
it's
there's
yeah. He
just an
wasn't
element
strapped with
of,
no cash.
oh god, no, he certainly didn't. He doesn't. He could never work again. He's fine with that. But in
Yeah,
terms of staying in the public eye and maintaining your stardom and stuff like that, yeah, he's got these huge big films, and his big action films are more in the sort of in the sequels territory. Suicide Squad was an interesting one because he wasn't the lead in that. It was an ensemble
yeah. He's
cast,
like
and I
he's a
guess
supporting
but
player in that. Yeah,
but that was obviously an idea of, hey, yeah, look at Marvel, right? You get in, and then everyone gets their own spin-off film when it's a big success, and obviously that just didn't happen. So that's how you get Will Smith to play a smaller role in your in your film. He's going through these action films, and now he's kind of aged up a bit, so he probably doesn't want to do all the action as much as he used to. You've done your
yeah.
serious films; people take you seriously. There's just an element of, in a 30-year career, you got to wind down at some point, or people get tired of you, or whatever.
And also
You
in between.
so how do you kind of maintain that? He did Aladdin. That was a bit of a diversion, I suppose. But like
Oh,
I like
I
Will
remember.
Smith. He's doing different things. He's trying new things. I think he's not playing it too safe, but he's also not like doing anything too risky. Martin Lawrence, had Big Mama's house to fall back on, so that was his thing. I'm sure he's doing very well in somewhere else, but I also sure
Yeah,
that he would have snapped your arm off to make another Bad Boys film.
that's fair enough. Yeah, so it
Uh,
came out. Yeah, January 2020. One of the few films that did get a cinema release in 2020. Before everything shut down and was very
yeah.
much. And it's I mean, January releases for films are often not ideal because that's often where you put the shit films that like very often it's like I mean I don't really see many movies in January because I'm like, well, these are all shit. The only stuff I do see is like stuff that was supposed to come out last year that just we don't get stuff here, like Oscar bait films that don't. get wide releases until like the middle of January. So it's like, oh, that's when I go. I don't see like sort of newer. I mean, you don't see new releases in general. But I think that January's a bit of a death spot. It's like, well, this is where we put movies. So I don't know what faith they had in the film doing well because it's sort of a very sort of early. But I mean, it did very well. Like they had a budget of 90 million, which is quite low. I feel like with Will Smith involved, he would have been asking for a lot. Like, I
Well,
mean,
that's
90
it. I
million is a
think you
pretty
asking for a lot less than he would have done 5 years earlier when they were trying to make it.
yeah. I mean, I just watched it like just before we started recording. Um, I thought it was fine, but I also think it's the weakest of the three films.
Mhm.
It just feels very lethargic, and it's sort of trying to I don't know, it's trying to recapture the sort of some of the magic, I guess you would say the first two had, but it just doesn't feel right because they are, like 50-year-old men trying to do stuff they did when
Mhm.
they were 20 something. So it doesn't work as well.
That sounds like what you're describing sounds like how I felt about Bad Boys 2. Just like it just didn't quite click in the same way. Whereas for me, the third one was a step up from the second one. It's nothing special,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
enjoyed it. It was, and they play into it all. Martin Lawrence's. I'm still too old for this shit. I'm too fat for this shit now. Like he doesn't want to doesn't want to be out in the field anymore. Again, that the central conceit is that Will Smith gets shot quite badly
Yeah.
and takes a long time to recover. So that's how that kicks off the plot. Will Smith is just
Mm.
desperate for Mike Lowry. I keep saying the actor's names, like obviously Will Smith is not out for vengeance. So Mike Lowry, he's out for vengeance, but Marcus is like, no, I'm a pacifist. I'm not doing this shit anymore.
Yeah.
It's too violent. And I think that's again, it creates conflict between them. They kind of fall out for a while. They have to come back together, and also they're really playing into this idea that Mike Lowry has completely lost the plot now. Because this is so
Mm.
personal that he's not playing by the book, but not even in a kind of I'm a bit of a cop on the edge kind of way. He's like I'm a cop out of control kind of way. And I think culturally we've moved on to a point where the people around him are going, "What the fuck are you doing? You can't do that. You can't go beating people
Mm.
up. Are you crazy? You're gonna get fired." Which in the 1995 it was fine. So I think that's nice. They kind of move with that. They acknowledge that stuff without kind of hammering it too hard.
Mm.
We have a few new characters. We have this setup of a new section in the police who are these young kids who are like
Mm.
tech wizards, and that's how we do police work these days, and not on the streets beating people up. Again, that feels like something that was set up, and they never quite like nail into it. They do
It
use
feels
that,
yeah.
but it feels like it should get because really what happens is like they get the kids out of the office and they go and shoot people. So I
Yeah,
don't know,
it
it didn't quite
feels
work for
like
me.
wasted potential because I was looking at the credits and I'm like, oh, I know some of these names. Like, I actually know these actors, and then they're kind of not in it that much. Like, they have a couple of scenes. Like, there's Charles Melton, who's one of the new actors in
Mhm.
it. He's sort of got a bit of a thing where him and Mike Lowry have a sort of a bit of a rivalry, I guess you could say. They sort of
Yeah,
spark off each other, but it never really goes much of anywhere. It sort of feels like I don't know, it's trying to yeah, to do something, but it doesn't it feels very half
yeah,
baked as an idea. And I
yeah,
think it could be an interesting idea of having sort of newer, younger cops, and contrast that with the older sort of cops who sort of play by the rules differently. I think you could have a very interesting story there, but the film never quite engages with it.
yeah. It sets it up, but we never. It's just used for a couple of gags and never comes to anything. And we
Yeah,
never really, we
and
don't get at the end where Mike Lowry learns that maybe his old ways don't work anymore and he has to change and adjust with the times. He just no, just went and shot everybody and, and set everything on fire, and then that was the end of the film.
yeah, and I I think the comedy it again I think the films are trying a little too hard at times to be funny. I thought sort of the Will Smith Martin Lawrence chemistry was a bit
Yeah,
off in this one. I felt like in the first two, it was basically the same level for 1 and 2. I think for this third one, it was a bit like,
hmm
like, I know they're older, but I was like, "Oh, they're not quite sparking off each other in the same way." Because there's lots of setup for them to spark off each other and have this chemistry with each other, but it just, yeah, never it just doesn't quite come together in a way that it could. Because
yeah,
I think this is the film that's trying the most to be sort of an emotional film. Like, there's some, like, very obvious, like, big emotional beats
yeah.
through it. But yeah, it just doesn't feel like it doesn't work in the way that it could. And there's some setups for some really nice ideas. It just doesn't, like,
And all the
I find
comedy
this.
between them in the comedy between the characters comes from their conflict. They're different people, but
Mm,
they obviously love each other and they spend a lot of time together and all that. So that's where the comedy comes from. The problem in the Bad Boys for Life is that they conflict so much that they go their separate ways and don't talk to each other. It's like, oh well, we need these guys
yeah,
together. Like, come on, like if
yeah,
they actually fall out, that's no good. We need them to be
yeah.
just like petty bickering at each other the whole time. That's the fun they
Mm.
get.
And I think the way, because I sort of was like, when they shot Will Smith, I think I'd heard from maybe your Diminishing Returns podcast or something, and that's where I got this idea that, like, oh, Will Smith gets shot. I'm like, oh, so is Will Smith not going to be in this film that much? And they're going to save some money by having Will Smith only be in a small portion of the film. And like, oh no, he's like the main character. He's really driving the film. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It feels a very weird, like, a tangent almost. Like, it does sort of get the main plot started, but it doesn't really feel like it doesn't quite work. Like, I don't know, something about it's just sort of a very big setup
Yeah,
for
and
something.
the Martin Lawrence character has this whole thing where, he kind of vows off of violence because he's seen his best friend, nearly die, uh, until the next time he needs to be violent, and he kind of hesitates and then goes, "Oh, I'll shoot these guys." Then that kind of
Yeah,
doesn't come to anything either. It's like-
it
that
doesn't
could be the
take
whole
much
thing that
for
he
him to
refuses
just
to hurt people.
it doesn't take much for him to just get convinced to be like, "Oh yeah, I can shoot people." It's like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
this is a gift from God," and it's like that's all it takes. I'm like, I that just feels really
because I think
feels
they could have done a
very
lot more with that.
strange.
Like he's literally retired and he's becomes a Buddhist pacifist. It seems him and the
Yeah,
captain are like doing these like Buddhist mantras and stuff. And I think that would be a really nice thing if he was just like really steadfastly like, no, you can't hurt people. This is not a way to deal with people in real life. And like throughout most of the film,
mm.
and then like right at the end, like in Die Hard, he learns to kill again, and and, uh, and that would be the big ending. But yeah, it's just sort
Yeah.
of ideas that kind of don't quite play out.
Yeah, no. This is a very Hollywood movie, and I think the film suffers because of that. Because it's like there isn't really a voice or a personality. It's just a standard, like, perfectly watchable Hollywood screenplay. But, like, I'm aware of how good Hollywood screenplays can be. Like, again, even for action films, I mean, we've mentioned before, but Speed and Die Hard are, very good Hollywood screenplays, for action films.
Mhm.
So it's a very, yeah,
And I think
interesting
there's
sort of.
there are some concepts here. Like we basically the main thrust of it is that Will Smith's character finds out that the person trying to kill him is actually his son from an illicit affair 25 years earlier. Um,
Yeah, that comes a bit
and
out of nowhere, though. It's a
yeah,
bit
it
of a.
feels like it doesn't quite segue in, and plus it creates this whole backstory for him that he's like, oh yeah, I was undercover and this drug dealer's wife, and I started sleeping with her, and we were gonna run away together. It was genuine. It was all love, but it turned out she was like a crazy witch. Like, and now I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah,
It's not kind of believable that even a young Mike Lowry would kind of fall for that, and I don't. It
yeah,
doesn't fit with the character we know of him. Yeah, it never
yeah.
quite made sense, but
Yeah. I want to mention something because I watched this Bad Boys for Life on Amazon Prime, and Amazon Prime's, like, app is fucking awful because they speak in Spanish and there's no subtitles that appear for when they speak in Spanish. So I'm like, is that
Right, yeah.
okay? And so then I turned the
I
subtitles off and I'm like, oh, that's really weird. And so I'm like, I had to find a different copy online and put subtitle and like watch that with subtitles. But then that started acting up. So I'm like, fine, I guess I gotta go back. So then what I had to do is I had to put the audio description on because it translates the Spanish stuff, but then it's also
oh no.
explaining every action that's happening. And I'm like, oh, why is this app so awful? This is so monumentally bad. Why would you design it this way? I like it, like just put the stuff that's not in like it's really annoying. And I'm like, I can't watch this film like this. Like, this is just terrible. I figured they would have like sorted this. Like, this shouldn't be a problem, but it was. So it's like, oh, this is terrible. So I'm just like, okay, I'll try and just watch the film without subtitles, and hopefully they just say something and then they immediately
Yeah,
do a
nothing
thing.
that important happens.
Yeah, no, exactly. I figured it. I'm like, okay, I can watch this. It's annoying. I can't understand it, but I'm like, oh, they're doing something. It's like speaking in Spanish, and then he's searching her, and I'm like, oh, okay, see, that's probably what he said. Okay, cool. So it's just really
I had a
weird.
similar problem. I was watching it online somewhere, some dodgy site, and it didn't have subtitles, so I had to go find another dodgy site with it on where it did. So yeah, I had a similar issue.
Yeah. But it's not like I was like engaged in it. It's just sort of like this should be fixed. Like Amazon's a massive
Yeah.
company. Surely they can like their streaming service is not a total piece of shit and like actually work. Like it's just like should be easy to figure out. But yeah, I thought the film as a whole, there was some fun action, couple bits of comedy. I'm like, oh, that's a nice idea for a joke. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in the way that it fully is intended to. And then they sort of tease this idea of Martin Lawrence is like retiring, and then by the end he doesn't. And it's like, oh, well, guess we're making another one, and it just sort of
Yeah.
has a lot going on and has some ideas, but it just doesn't come together because it's just sort of stuff thrown at a wall. Just like, okay, we'll just put all this in, and then we're just not gonna sort of focus on it. And it's just like too much. It's trying to put all these ideas together. It's like you can leave this, like you can make another, like if you want to make another one, you can take half of this out and make that the next one, But it's
But
just
yeah, I
sort
mean,
of
with this, obviously, it took a long time for this one to come out. So presumably, I mean, Will Smith's going to be way too busy to do another one. Probably take 20 years before it'll be like them in the retirement home.
yeah.
Unless he does something crazy and destroys his career.
Yeah, it's like,
Well, he can't. That's not going to happen because he did that Venus Williams a film. He was going to win an Oscar for it. I mean, he can't fuck that up, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. He's got to get that Oscar. He's making a serious film. He's gonna get an Oscar. He's gonna get lots of roles. Everything's gonna work out totally fine for Will Smith. He's gonna, so you might as well just do this all now because there's no way we're gonna be able to make another one. Certainly not for a long time. And then, so it's just like, which I understand that to a sort of degree of like, well, we might not be able to make another one, so to a degree, I get it, but it does come at the expense of the quality of the film, of trying to do everything. The film very much tries to. It's just a lot, but it doesn't have the runtime. It just doesn't have the runtime to handle all of it. It's like it's slightly longer than the first one, but not by much, and it's 25-ish minutes shorter than the second one, so it's like, and I mean, it's just a lot, and it was perfectly watchable. Like I had no problem watching the film. Like I don't think it's a bad film. It's a very competently made film. It just didn't leave me with anything where I'm like, oh, that's a great bit, Whereas I think the first two had moments like that.
I was fine with it actually. Didn't blow me away, but it was like, yeah, that's fine. I preferred it to the second one, frankly. Well, there you go. What about this though? Because obviously Michael Bay does not return to do this film.
Yeah, he does
Um,
not.
it was what are they called? There's a pair of directors, Adil and
Yeah.
Bilal, who are Belgian, I think. But again, they
Yeah,
seem to have they seem to. I looked at their filmography and it's like they obviously do like music videos and stuff like that, but then they've done a couple of smaller films. This is a big step up in terms of
Yeah, no.
budget and notoriety and stuff. But they were obviously I haven't seen their earlier films, but they're obviously doing something that made people go, "Oh wow, look
Yeah,
at these
I'm just
guys."
looking here, and they were the directors of the Batgirl film that was canned, that got basically finished, and then
Ah.
so
Was
they
that
they
before
they,
this
they did.
or after?
No,
No,
that
that was
was
after
after
this,
this.
right?
It was after this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they this is like their next thing, their credit. Well, yeah. So I think I don't know when the Batgirl film was planned to come out.
But these are guys that you hire because they do great visuals and action and
Yeah,
stuff like that, and they're not they're not they're not character comedians or anything like that. So
yeah,
and they're also taking this big step up, which means you do what you're told. And when Jerry Bruckheimer comes
yeah,
in and says, "This is what I want," you just do it. So I think it loses that sense of, again, some sense of ownership about it. It just becomes a product. It becomes a Hollywood product. Because even in the 90s, Michael Bay, this was his first film. But Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson were a bit more established. They'd done all these big action films in the 80s. But
mm,
Michael Bay has a force of personality that kind of comes to that. And so you just need a little bit of control on him. And I think
yeah,
these days you see a lot of these bigger films, and it's just like, oh yeah, we found this guy. He's Mexican. He's in this like couple of little films that no
yeah,
one's heard of, but he's got this great visual look. It's like they want people who are going to do as they're told, and I think it's
yeah.
a shame because then you just end up with these studio kind of products.
Yeah, I think you see this a lot with like big franchise stuff in general. I mean, even like early Marvel films were very much like of a relatively similar mold. They, like like directors were able to bring personality, but they were on a leash. Like you see it with a lot of
Yeah.
films now, and I think yeah, with Marvel, it is kind of different because it's like, well, we are trying to create like a big franchise here. We want to keep everything restrained for now so we can get the audience on board before we eventually in a few years down the line we can get bigger and get a bit crazier with it. But I think a lot of Hollywood films, a lot of filmmakers now are sort of hired guns. I feel like there aren't as many
Mm.
like directors producing big Hollywood films that aren't hired guns. Like sort of the most interesting directors are guys making like small little horror films or intimate dramas or that kind of thing. They're not making big Hollywood productions, and
Mhm.
it's changed in the industry because it's you sort of yeah you sort of have it like I can't think of a major director that's been discovered like in the last few years who is like a big Hollywood director, but they aren't just a hired gun. Like they have got some personality. They've got something to them. I think it's been a while since we've had a director sort of in
Well, I
that
think
mold.
we have one thing we've lost in the industry recently is that kind of mid-level, mid-budget drama films and low-budget comedies, which
Mm,
will come back. It'll bounce back at some point. Everything's gone into
yeah,
these huge, big budget action films, and you can't fuck about with that. You spend $200 million on a film, you
yeah,
need to get it right. And
yeah,
unfortunately,
exactly.
getting it right in the studio's heads means ticking these boxes. What was successful last time? Let's just do that. And that
Yeah,
doesn't mean, and even though we're like a fucking 120 years into the industry now, they haven't worked out what works, and the fact that
yeah,
it's
no,
kind of original ideas, and because that's risky, it's too risky for them.
and I just think the industry is changing, and I think studios are sort of not quite grasping that yet. I think because there's just sequels and remakes and everything, and I think
Mhm.
and I'm okay with the Hollywood system. I like a lot of what Disney makes. I do on the whole enjoy. Like I enjoy a lot of their Marvel stuff. I enjoy some of their Disney animation and Pixar stuff still. It's just sort of like but they're not innovating in the way they used to be. You know, I think, and this is sort of similar for a lot of for a lot of major studios. Is there's no like the innovation and the willing to be a bit more risky with films because films that are riskier are from like smaller studios like A24 and that kind of thing where they
Mhm.
they're happy to let filmmakers just do what they want. Just be like, here, have 30 million, make whatever you want. And it's the major studios that are sort of stifling that almost. And I'm sure there will be a pendulum swing back the other way. This won't last forever, but it's just sort of, yeah, Hollywood is sort of like not. Yeah, and I think Bad Boys, I think Bad Boys is sort of part of that problem. It's just like, oh, let's just make a sequel to a film from a long time ago because people will see it, and it's sort of and like people do see it and they're like, well, we'll do that because it worked this time. So it's sort of it's part of a
Yeah.
larger issue, I think.
But this is, this whole thing, it happens in cycles. And, now, things, the cinema is dying. It's amazing it's not dead, frankly, after the pandemic. That should have been the last straw, really. And it's probably never going to come back in the same way because home
Yeah.
entertainment is so much, it's so close
Yeah.
to it. You watch, you've got a big, massive TV, HD, like it's not that much difference to the
Yeah.
cinema experience of what it used to be. It used to
Yeah,
be a
exactly.
different experience because your shitty little VHS,
Yeah,
12-inch
your
screen.
square TV. Yeah, your square
Yeah,
TV with the sometimes the tape is a bit off it and there's like,
and
you
it's
know.
never going to be that again. But having said that, streaming services looked like that was going to be the future. But already, we're 5 years into that. Everyone hates streaming. Everyone's
I
sick of
know,
it
it's
already
insane.
because you have
It's
to have
crazy.
like, oh look, you can have any film you want, just right at your fingertips. Oh, but you have to subscribe to like 8 different things, and they're gonna like
Oh my
randomly take
god.
them off or change them, and you're
Yeah.
fucked. You can't do anything
And we're
about it.
increasing how much you're gonna have to pay. Like it used to be $10 and like $10 is fine, but now it's increased to like $20. Well, here it is. It's like
Yeah,
$20 for
because
Netflix.
they're not just got this backlog of stuff and like, oh, you can watch this, pay us a bit of money, we'll let you watch it instead of like buying a DVD. You can just watch it on here. Now we have to. Oh shit, we need to create new content as well. Oh, that's going to be a lot more expensive. We haven't thought of
Yeah,
that. We're going to need a lot more money, I guess.
exactly. And they
That
pump.
streaming
Yeah.
is a distribution service. It's not a creation service, and so
Yeah,
the two
exactly.
don't tally. We
Yeah.
need people. We need the studios making the films as well.
Yeah. And there's
Plus
some
you've
good
got
stuff.
companies like Disney and whatever. They want to control every aspect of it, like they did back in the 50s. But
Yeah.
that means you've got to pay for everything as well.
Yeah, and I mean to sort of tie into this because I don't know how much of that I'm going to use because it's a very long rant, but I think it is sort of Bad Boys 4, Bad Boys Ride or Die, which I thought was called Bad Boys for Life because it's the fourth one, and
Oh
in
yeah,
my mind I'm like that's the title. I mean,
yeah.
I hate titles where they use a number as a word. Like I find that
Oh yeah.
annoying. It's awful, but that's just in my mind. Like that is such like the obvious title, because like you've used it already. And I think Bad Boys 4, it's like, did we need a Bad Boys 4? Like, was anybody like, we need Bad Boys 4? And I get that, like, Bad Boys 3 made a fairly good chunk of money, made like nearly 500 million on a $90 million budget. So, like, people did see it. But it's like, we don't need that, though. Like, we don't
Well,
need
that's it.
a
Like
new Bad
when Bad
Boys.
Boys 3 came out, it had been 17 years since the previous film. So I'm like, okay, I'm curious as to what this is. It's like the same with the Bill and Ted thing they did 30
Yeah,
years later. It's
exactly.
like, okay, I'm curious as what's going to happen here. I don't care now. Like,
Yeah,
how much
exactly.
different is it going to be now? I know it's just going to be the same thing. So yeah,
Exactly, and I think that is part of the thing as well. As if you make a, and this it comes every now and again, like when they did. I was gonna say Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters 2016 didn't make money. But sort of if you take something, you wait a long time in between films, you do get that. You do sort of every now and again be like, well, we're gonna make a new film in a franchise that has had a new film for however many years, and that gets seats in, butts in seats. And but it's like it's only been 4 years since the last one. It's like, how well can this do? And I mean, probably part of it is Will Smith being like, "Oh, I kind of might,
I need
need a job
to.
now because
Yeah.
I've
I think this
kind of
film is
ruined
going
my
to be
career."
about Mike Lowry being the nicest guy ever, and he's just amazing. Everyone loves him, and he's just really great to everyone, and he's changed his ways.
So they had. All right. So in April 2022, it's reported that development for the fourth one was being put on hold in light of the incident with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars. But it was still in development. So, but they were suspended because of the SAG after strikes. So they wrapped filming in March. So they had a very long road to get it made. Like, so I presume if Will Smith hadn't, assaulted Chris Rock, it probably would have come out by now. I think they would have gotten it out even sooner. They just had to, put it on hold and be like, "Oh, we probably shouldn't make a Will Smith
Let
film
that
right
die
now.
down a bit.
We gotta let people forget
I
about
tell you
this
what,
for a bit."
I'm gonna go see this film, and there better be a scene where they're interrogating a suspect, and Will Smith slaps him, and then Martin Lawrence is like, "What are you doing? Well, you just slapped a guy.
Yeah,
What's that about?"
yeah.
And then he
I
goes, "I'm
mean,
sorry.
yeah,
I really shouldn't have done that." That's what
yeah,
they should do.
yeah. Yeah. I haven't. Like, I'll see it. Because I mean, I've got to talk about it, yeah, on this podcast when I get to the end of the year. But like, I'm. It's more of a like, it's not a. This isn't a film that I'm like, I want to see this film. It's more just like, more out of like necessity to see it. Like,
It's a
well,
morbid curiosity to see what
yeah,
they do.
and I'm interested to see what they do with it, because I'm like, I was looking at who's in it, and it's like, because Joe Pantoliano, if you haven't seen them, he gets killed off in the third one. Very
Yeah,
sort
in
of.
a really nice kind of emotional bit where they
I
they
thought that was
they
actually
they stick
a
to their
pretty nice
guns. You know,
scene.
someone dies, and they're like, "Okay, this is a real consequence of this
Yeah,
life,"
they actually,
and then they
it
bring him back. So
actually,
fuck that.
yeah, it sort of
Yeah.
lessens.
But
That's like,
have you
that's one
seen
of
the
the best.
trailer?
I haven't seen it. No, I've
Oh, I
seen
watched
like
the trailer. I
clip.
thought I'll watch it for this. There was one trailer that was just all action. I was like, oh, this looks shit. And then there was another
Oh
trailer that
yeah,
had a bit more kind of banter in it, and it just looked like, yeah, this is more of the same. I'm not expecting anything
yeah.
special. But yeah, Joe Pantoliano is on a video, and it's a video of going, "If you're watching this, I am dead. Hello."
Oh, I hate that so much.
Yeah,
That's one of my most hated like tropes
yeah,
in
it's not
films.
good.
Like, yeah, I mean, I was mostly interested because they announced that Rhea Seehorn was going to be in it, who I'm very familiar with from Better Call Saul. I think she's fantastic
Oh
in
yeah.
that. And I'm like, what is she gonna do in that? And then I'm like, well, we're talking, and then Soul mentioned, actually, it kind of makes sense because like she could be like the new police captain because they killed Leon in the next one. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that does actually make sense, and like it does make sense. She does fit that. Well, actually, it says here she's
Well,
playing U.S. Marshal agent who's hunting down
yeah,
Lycan Marcus. So,
the general plot is that they're being framed by some that they are
yeah, I
corrupt
think I
police
must have
officers, and they have to.
seen bits
So
of the
they're obviously
trailer.
they have to go rogue and off the books to prove themselves innocent, and the
Mm.
police are chasing them, which I think is a nice concept. I think that's a nice way
That's
to
actually not a
pull
bad idea,
pull something
yeah. I
new
like that
in.
as
Yeah,
an idea.
should work.
But also it
But
is like
will it be any good?
beat they do beat suspects willy-nilly in the first couple films. They're not, I could believe
Yeah, it's not
that
like they're
they,
bound by the rules of the law, and now they can go
yeah,
wild.
so it's a believable way to frame them. Yeah, I can believe they would get.
Yeah, and I hope that Martin Lawrence is a lot fatter. That'll be funny. I think they'll do a bit where they get into Will Smith's like low-rise car, and you can see it leaning to one side because Martin Lawrence is in it. That'd be a good bit. I could write this myself. I'm gonna.
I mean, again, it's like it's there's, and it probably would be funny because I'm looking at, so they've got one of the people who wrote, Chris Bremner, who wrote the last film, and I'm just looking at the other writer who's called Will Beal. His other writing credits are Gangster Squad, which I've not really heard good words about,
Oh, but it
Aquaman,
says it
which,
says here he's a former LAPD detective. That's an interesting. That's an
oh,
interesting one.
that gives you
That
a
could
bit
bring
of like,
bring
oh,
something into it. Yeah.
yeah, there's realism, but he's also credited as writing some DC films, and not particularly good DC, because he wrote Aquaman, which, you know,
It's a great
and
film.
the the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, although he's only got a story by credit on that. Yeah, I mean, also we do ratings on here. I mean, you're familiar with putting ratings on
Yeah.
films before, so yeah, I give the first Bad Boys a 7. I give Bad Boys 2 a 7, and I give Bad Boys For Life a 6. So they're on sort of a
Pretty
similar
consistent.
level. It's far more consistent than I was expecting. Like, they were very watchable films for me, but they just didn't. Yeah, it's sort of perfectly watchable, entertaining, fun, but yeah, nothing much that I'm like. It sort of doesn't quite get to that next level for me.
Well, so my ratings in order go 8, 5, 7.
Oh, that's very. Oh, that's a bit harsher. Oh,
I don't like Bad Boys 2 particularly. Bad Boys
yeah,
2 just felt like everything,
yeah,
everything that's wrong with Bad Boys
yeah.
ramped up and
Just
losing some of the
heightened,
charms.
just ramped up to
Yeah.
a much higher level. Yeah. Um. I mean, I don't really know if there's much to say. Really, I mean, I think we've basically wrapped up the
We've broken that
discussion.
one down a bit. But yeah,
Yeah, we talked.
I'll go.
Yeah,
I will inevitably go and see the new one. Like, just,
yeah,
like as
yeah,
much as I
and
know
I'll
it's
be
probably going to be
interested to
shite.
get your thoughts on it, just because I'm like,
Yeah,
I think because they're not like, I know what I'm getting when I'm watching a Bad Boys film. I'm not gonna go in expecting something unless it gets like amazing reviews. I'm just gonna go and be like, just another Bad Boys film. It'll presumably be on the level of the others. I very rarely, unless a film, like, I sort of go in like knowing what a film's gonna be. I'm like, this is a comedy. If it works as a comedy, it works. And this is like, it's a Bad Boys film. I presume it'll be at the same level. So if it does that, it's like, at worst, yeah, it depends. It's just, if it doesn't work, if it's, yeah, like, it could be a 6, but it could be worse. Like, they could try new things and they just don't work. Like, it sort of, depends really.
here's the Bad Boys film I want to see. Right, is the two of them.
Yeah.
They go to some drug dealer's house. They're like trying to break in to find information like without a warrant, totally illegal. But then it turns out it's a trap. The house kind of locks down, and then it's a sort of escape room film where they have to go
Mm,
from like one room to another, and there's tests. But Martin Lawrence is
yeah.
convinced it's haunted, and then they can blow things up a couple of times, and then they're on the phone to someone like a female cop in the office. She's helping them on the phone, like she's doing some tech stuff for them. And that's it. That's all I need. And then at the end, they get out and slap the drug dealer.
I honestly, I will be slightly disappointed if there is not a reference to the slap. Like, I think it would be
I
a
think
missed
if you're Will
opportunity.
Smith, do it. Acknowledge it in this safe space. Make a joke of it.
Yeah,
Acknowledge how stupid it was, and
yeah,
apologize. And then
yeah,
that's all you need to do.
yeah. It's yeah. It's weird that was like, yeah. It's still an insane thing that even happened. Like, it was
Get
only
Chris
2 years
Rock
ago.
in. Get Chris Rock in to slap you in the film. That's what you do.
There you go.
And then
You
you
make
go,
it. Yeah,
fair enough, I deserve that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Is there anything that you would like to plug? I usually ask people if you want to plug anything before I wrap this up.
Yeah, well, if you like me talking about films, the Diminishing Returns podcast is available. We don't really do it anymore. We just stopped because life got in the way. We did it for 5 or 6 years, so there's loads of
It's
stuff out
pretty.
there. And I do believe we did a Bad Boys episode back in the
You did,
day when
yeah,
the
a
third
few
film
years
came
ago.
out.
Yeah, and the third film came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If slightly more niche, but I also do a podcast called the British Sitcom History Podcast, which is all about the history of British sitcoms. So if you're into that kind
Mm,
of thing,
yeah.
we don't really do much recent stuff. It's all like
Yeah,
older.
I've listened to a handful of episodes because I'm like, these are the shows I've seen, and I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah,
stuff from the 80s and that. And I'm like, I'm like, some of it I'm aware of it. I just like, I will watch that and then I'll listen to it because that's how I am with
because we've done
podcasts.
some big shows like Faulty Towers and stuff like that everyone knows.
Yeah,
But yeah, we also do some pretty niche stuff that if you're not a
yeah.
sitcom nerd like me, then like fair enough.
And then yeah, a British Sitcom History Podcast. I also have listened to a few episodes and I've enjoyed the ones I've listened to. There's some really solid stuff there. Um, yeah, and I mean that's pretty much it. I think really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. It's been a few weeks, I think, probably since I've uploaded an episode. It's just life gets in the way. I'm getting towards the end of my semester at for uni right now, so it's very hard to do episodes. If you want to get into podcasting, like, please, like, I think podcasting, the results are very they're worth it. For me, it's like I put an episode out and I'm like, it's done. And then sometimes I get some episodes I'm really like quite proud of it. I'm like, I put a lot of effort into it, and it comes out, and it's like when it works out and it comes out well, I'm like, it's the end result is always worth it for me. Sometimes not every episode's to the same level, but when you get a good episode, it's a very good episode. And I mean, if you want to get into it, you can. It's just a lot, like, and the early
Yeah.
stuff might not be, a lot of my early stuff I'm not a fan of. Some of it's very like the audio quality is not good, but yeah, I think that's true for a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, this is part of the problem now. Podcasts like 10 years ago, it was still this kind of
Exactly.
people doing in their
Yeah, no,
home thing, and the standards are higher now. People expect a bit more, which is annoying. Because it means it's harder to get into.
Yeah, no, and I think if you want to get into podcasting, make sure you've got something. Like I started doing this, and the idea was each week it would be covering a film that I or my guest hadn't seen, so we would be able to bring new perspectives to it. Diminishing
Mhm.
returns. You guys would pitch ideas for sequels. I mean, you stopped doing
Yeah,
that at a certain point, but
because
for
it's
the
hard work.
first, yeah. If for those of you listening and you've listened, because this is like 150 something episodes I've done. Like, if you want to listen, if you want to make podcasting, you just do it. Like, don't be like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to. You just do it. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you at least know. And make sure you've got stuff planned. If you're gonna, make a logo, and if you want to have music, get that. It takes a while to get these things, sort of. Because when I started, I had bits and pieces, but I didn't quite have like everything I needed. And now I'm sort of at a place where it's like I've got the podcast on basically every platform. I've got social media that I post occasionally. I've got, it's sort of like, but it's a lot. So it's, do it if you want to try it. It's, worth having a go, I think. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you, Alan, for joining me for this week's
Thank you
episode.
for having me.
And yeah, go listen to Alan's podcasts, British Sitcom History and Diminishing Returns Podcast. He's also, but yeah, thank you all for listening to this week's episode. And yeah, 150 something episodes. You go listen to all my past ones, or don't if you don't want to. But I'd like it if you do, because some good stuff there. Yes, thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you all guys in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.